is atrocious because it is very rainy and gloomy outside. We had a little bit of snow yesterday, but it has just turned to rain, as it so often does in this neck of the woods. But it is time to pick the very first TBR bingo. We're gonna do it randomly to start out with. So I have a little picker wheel. I'm gonna screen record and I'm gonna try to figure out in editing how to pop that like here or here somewhere so that you know that I'm not cheating. Even though I don't know why, like, why would I do this and then cheat? Like, it really doesn't, I don't have to do this, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. But here we are. This is very exciting. It's always like right on the line. G2. Oh, can I predict what that is? G2. The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. Interesting. Okay, that one's not like super long. Okay, so I grabbed it. Here it is, The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. So the reason that this one is, like, that I own this one and that it's on my TBR at all is because of the push, which I read, thankfully, before I got pregnant. I think the year this came out is when I read it, so that would be 2021. So this was, I thought, phenomenal. It was very unsettling and very creepy and disturbing and scary, but also tackled some generational ideas, like generational trauma. It basically follows a woman who is kind of reluctant to become a mother, but her husband really wants kids. So she gets pregnant, she has the kid, and immediately something is off. She has a kid kind of reluctantly, and she just doesn't feel this connection to her child right away. And she starts to feel like something's off, but she can't decide if it is all in her head or if it's actually real. Like she's starting to question her own sanity. Very, very unsettling where this book goes and the places it goes to. And I do not think that I could read it now, knowing what happens. So yeah, I'm glad I read this when I did, because I don't think I'll be rereading it, and I don't, but this one, so I'm a little concerned now that I've said all of that, because can I emotionally handle this? Because I believe this one's about motherhood too. Let us see the synopsis together. On Harlow Street, the well-to-do neighborhood couples and their children gather for a barbecue as the summer winds down. Everything is fabulous until Whitney, the picture-perfect hostess, explodes in fury because her son disobeys her. Everyone at the party hears her exquisite veneer crack loud and clear. Before long, that same young boy falls from his bedside window in the middle of the night, and then his mother can only sit by her son's hospital bed where his life hangs in the balance. Over the course of a tense 3 days, the women of the neighborhood grapple with what led to that terrible night. People-pleasing Blair, Whitney's best friend, suspects something isn't as it seems. Rebecca, the ER doctor who helps treat Whitney's son, has struggled to have a child of her own. And the all-knowing Mara, the older woman next door, watches everyone's world unravel from her front porch. Exploring envy, women's friendships, desire, and the intuitions that we silence, The Whispers is a chilling novel that marks Ashley Audrain as a major fiction talent. I'm a little concerned. I have become a lot more sensitive to things happening to kids in books, in media, like television, movies, since having a kid. I don't know if this is a common experience. I don't know if this happens a lot, but when things happen to kids now and I'm watching it, I have a harder time with it. So I don't know, I might not make it through this one, but we're gonna give it a go, and I will check in once I have read a little bit of it. I'll maybe try to get a quarter of the way through, and then I'll check in and let you know how it's going. The other thing that I wanted to share, and I wasn't really planning on including this book in this vlog. This is the first book that I've picked up this year, and I kind of feel like it's gonna be a 5-star, so I want to talk about it. So that book is I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie. I think I'm a little over 50%. Maybe I'm like 60% of the way through this book. And it's not what I expected initially coming into it. So we start off and it seems like it's going to be kind of a workplace comedy of errors. I've seen it get compared to The Office, which I find interesting given my experience with it so far. And we start off with our protagonist, Jolene, who works this dead-end job that she hates, and she hates all of her coworkers, and she really has a hard time connecting with them. And so to kind of cope with that, she decides to be a little passive-aggressive and write snarky little comments in her emails. So she'll, someone will send her an email asking for something that she thinks is dumb. And so she'll respond back normally, but then she'll write a snarky little comment, but change the text to white so that, the person doesn't see it and they can't read it, but she can still feel like she's kind of said something to them. And the first chapter opens with her kind of getting caught doing this. And it was really fun. Like, I was chuckling out loud. I've never worked in a traditional office setting. I was a teacher. Before that, I had, retail jobs and food service jobs and things like that. There are experiences in the jobs that I've had that are similar to this, in the sense of trying to form relationships with your coworkers, not really knowing how to do that. The HR of it all, like, there's a lot of things that I can relate to personally, but there's a lot of things that I can't. And so I thought I would enjoy this book and kind of chuckle at it and think it was funny, but I didn't think it would be a 5-star or anything like that. And now that I'm getting further into it, I am just really I'm blown away by it a little bit. It is very sweet and tender, and then it's also got a sarcastic kind of snarky edge to it. Jolene has such a hard time not only just relating to her coworkers, but relating to people in general. She's had some kind of traumatic life events in her past, and she has a lot of social anxiety and a lot of really relatable thought processes to me, where she constantly overanalyzes everything that she's saying or has said and worries about it, and worries if it's offended someone or worries if it's caused someone to not like her. And she also kind of makes snap judgments about a lot of her coworkers. Some of them valid and understandable that she would come to that conclusion, but some of them she just didn't know the full story, or she didn't know what was going on in their lives. Like, this is very much a book of, you never know what someone's going through. And we have this relationship with a lot of our coworkers where we spend 8 hours a day with them. So we feel like we know them, and we feel that what we see is all there is to see, but people contain multitudes. There's so much more to someone than what initially meets the eye. And I'm really enjoying it a lot, and it's making me surprisingly emotional. I didn't expect it to, but there have been parts of this, I haven't cried yet, but there have been parts of this that have really hit me in the heart, in the feels. And so I really respect what this book is doing so far. So I'll update when I finished it to kind of let y'all know how I feel, but I feel like it may be a 5-star, and that's crazy to me because it's the first book that I picked up, and I kind of just picked it up randomly. Talk about happenstance. So yeah, I'm excited to keep reading that one, and I'm excited to pick up this one / slightly nervous. I'm slightly I'm slightly nervous about this one. I'm gonna get a little bit into it and then I will update you and let you know if I am having an emotional meltdown over it. We'll see what happens. Hello. All right, I feel like I needed to update. It is Monday. The last clip that I filmed was like Thursday of last week. I'm new to the vlogging thing. I'm not really entirely sure how to do it, but we're doing it. So, some reading updates for you. I did in fact finish I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue, and I really enjoyed that one. I didn't expect to get as much out of it as I did. I think she really captured the kind of social anxiety that accompanies being in an office or a school or any kind of social situation where you just haven't really been able to find your footing. It was almost a little too relatable how Jolene would kind of process what she thought about certain people, and it ended up being, and what she thought about certain people and how she thought they were perceiving her, and kind of this fear of being perceived negatively, so much so that you then shut down and don't interact and are still perceived negatively because then you're not interacting. And it still had its funny kind of zany office politic moments, but it was a lot more like a journey of self-discovery. Just be a little kinder to people, and you know, hopefully people like will be kinder to you. I don't know. I think don't assume that you know everything about somebody just by, you know, a few interactions you may have had with them, or just even what you outwardly perceive when they're interacting with other people, because you just don't know. And yeah, I thought it was really beautiful. I like teared up a little bit at the end, and I would highly recommend that one. It was a great first read. I think I would say it's like a 4.5 star for me. Not quite a 5, but very, very close. And so I really, I think that was a really good one. So then I began reading this one. I began reading this one that I spun on my bingo wheel, The Whispers by Audrain. I am on page 142, which I believe is just under halfway through. She deals a lot with kind of the darker side of motherhood. And so I can imagine this being a very difficult read if you have struggles with motherhood, have struggles with wanting to become a parent and not being able to. There's a character in here that's dealing with infertility. There's a character that has mentioned loss of a child. We haven't gotten the full backstory on that, but it's been implied. And there's a couple of characters that are reckoning with their choices surrounding motherhood. So we have one woman who has devoted more time and attention to her career, and her focus kind of is there, and she feels torn about splitting that focus between her children and her career. And there's another woman who has chosen to be a stay-at-home mom. And so she also feels kind of torn about the decision and doesn't know if it's the right one. And I think that's the point, really. Like, you never feel like you're making the right decision. You never do. And that's a lot of what this book deals with, at least so far. We haven't really gotten into the inciting incident has happened where one of the children has fallen out of a third-story window. He is in the hospital, and we're kind of going back and forth in time from different characters' perspectives to try and figure out how that happened. But it's not written in like a mystery style. It's very much kind of slice of life with this really dramatic component in there, because there's some implication that the mother of this child feels some sort of culpability for what happened. She's been built up to kind of show a lot of her frustration and her resentment with being a mother, particularly a mother to this child who has, had some difficulties behaviorally. Yeah, I don't know. This one is not hitting me in the same way that The Push did, I will say. It's good, but I think there's just a lot of kind of circular talk about the different roles that women are forced into, surrounding, if you are a mother or if you're not a mother, and how those choices are perceived by other people and how they're perceived internally by your own judgment of yourself. And she really hits at those issues in a way that I think is really impactful, but I'm not so gripped by this one as I was by The Push. The Push was wild. Like, that was a wild book. This one is a lot calmer, I guess. Obviously something terrible has happened, but I'm filled with less dread than I was reading The Push. Still some dread. There's definitely still some amount of dread in this, but a little bit less. I'm enjoying this one. I'm not loving it, but I'm definitely liking it, and I'm gonna keep reading and seeing where we end up here. I've seen a lot of people say that like reading these books makes them not it confirms their choice to not become parents, and I can understand that, because it's the opposite of kind of glamorization of motherhood, parenthood, etc., which I think is valuable. And even though I very much do not regret at all my decision to have a child, it's really hard. Like, it's really, really hard, and it's really hard in the best of circumstances, which this book kind of touches on as well, of like, even with a lot of privilege, a lot of wealth, help, etc., it's still really hard to raise a human in any capacity. So yeah, so this is interesting so far. I can keep reading it and let you know how I come to find it as I move forward. Now, the other book that I picked up is Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty. And Apples Never Fall, so I've read from Liane Moriarty before. I wanted to kind of pick another book that was a little bit similar to Ashley Audrain, and Liane Moriarty also does this kind of literary mystery thriller vibe, and dealing specifically with kind of motherhood, parenthood, family, neighbor drama, etc. They kind of, I would say these are pretty good companion books in that sense. This one I'm liking. I would say that it is not, the other book I've read by her is Big Little Lies, and that was like one of my favorite books of the year that I read it. I was hooked on that book. I think it completely makes sense why that one got adapted to a TV show. I think it lent itself really well to that. And this one is interesting. It's keeping me guessing. So we're following the 4 adult children of a mother who has gone missing, and she has been missing for a really long time, and everyone's starting to suspect that all is not right in the situation. And it goes, it goes back and forth in time. It goes through the different perspectives of all of the children, their experiences growing up. The family was really involved in tennis, so it talks about that a little bit. And there are family secrets that come out. There is a house guest that is like kind of mysterious, but might be hiding something. We're not really sure. And then we're also following the police investigation of trying to figure out like where this woman is. And this one is very much, I think the focus is on mothers of adult children and how they handle the empty nest of it all. And she desperately wants grandchildren, like that kind of thing. How do you, if you had your whole life wrapped up in raising your kids and doing your job. She worked at the tennis, she was a tennis coach, and then she also was the primary caregiver because, the dad is, useless. And she retires and her children are all grown up, and then she's like, what do I do with my life? What do I, how do I navigate this new reality that I'm in? So there's a lot of discussion of that. I really like Liane Moriarty's style in the sense that she will tell you what's happening, or she'll show you what's happening through like kind of seemingly random characters. Like the waiter at the restaurant overhears the conversation between the siblings, and that's how you find out this piece of information. Or the Uber driver hears them talking on the phone, and so that's how you hear about this piece of information. The hairdresser hears something, and so you get like those little asides sprinkled in between the main character perspectives. And yeah, it's really interesting. We've already had one. I'm like 80% into this. We've already had one kind of plot reveal situation. We've gotten some answers, but I would suspect that we have more to come. I think I might do a little workout for about 20 minutes or so and see if I can finish this. I probably won't finish it in 20 minutes, but I will finish it tonight, and then I will give you an update tomorrow. And the Whispers I'll probably finish within the next few days. I've been kind of putting off, this is where I need to like learn how to do these, because I've been kind of putting off reading them because I wanted to check in about how I was feeling about these books before I finished them. And so like I didn't even read at all yesterday, which felt weird. I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out. We're gonna make this work. It occurred to me as I was talking about class, I don't think that I in my intro video talked about this. I'm in grad school right now. I am working to become a speech language pathologist. I was a teacher for 8 years and got to the point where that was not something that I wanted to do anymore for a myriad of reasons. But I still really enjoy a lot of aspects of what I did. I was a special education teacher, so this seemed like a very natural progression of things. So I'm in my second semester. Well, I've done a year of prerequisites, and then now I'm in my second semester of my first like full year of grad school. So I'm going to be doing classes and then clinical practicum where I work with some students out of school. And yeah, so when I reference class and stuff like that, that's what I'm doing, if you were curious about that. Okay, bye for real. Hello. All right. So it's Monday. If you recall in the last clip, it was also Monday because it's been a week. And when I say it's been a week, like I mean, it's been a week. It's been a week. Slightly unhinged here with this update. So after I spoke to you, oh my God, what is my hair doing? Lord of mercy. I don't think that's better. Yeah, that's not better. There we go. So after I spoke to you last week, right before my class started, ready and excited and raring to go for the week, my son got sick. He got RSV, which if you are not in the know, sucks. It is a respiratory virus, and it just basically is like a cold. It can get really serious. It can get really bad, especially for really young kids. But luckily for my son, it just kind of was like a cold. But he was pretty miserable for about 4 days and had a fever, and just in general, life was hard. He wasn't sleeping. He couldn't go to daycare, obviously, because he was sick, and it was not a pleasant time. And this is all in the midst of like the semester is starting back up. I'm trying to get into my grad school stuff. And I think for from Tuesday through Thursday, I think I slept a collective like maybe 6 or 7 hours, like across those 3 nights. Like it was not fun. It was not a fun time. So yeah, I didn't get to update. I didn't get to like kind of vlog in the way that I had anticipated, but we roll with the punches. We move on. That's just what we have to do. So here we are. So I do have some reading updates, even though my life has been chaotic. The Kindle is super helpful for this because I can just sit and hold him and read my Kindle, whereas with a book, much more difficult. So the first update I have is about Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty. I did, in fact, finish this one. I did like a combo of listening to the audiobook and reading it on here. And so the first like 3/4 of this book, I was like, okay, this is your pretty standard, typical like mystery story, family drama, kind of all of the hallmarks that you would expect. You could kind of tell that there were several red herrings that she was trying to incorporate, to where like, oh, it might be this person, or oh, it might be this person, and like, but they're too suspicious. So I was like, neither of these two suspects that we are being led to believe are responsible for this disappearance are gonna be the culprit, because like it's too obvious, right? So I was waiting for the twist to kind of really see how I felt about this, and the tonal shift at the end of this book is actually crazy. Like, it is a completely different book at the end. And I'm not going to say in what way or how or why, but it literally just took such a left turn. And I don't know that I liked it. I think I don't think I did like it. I'll be honest here. I don't think I liked the direction that it went at the very end, the end reveals. And then after we got kind of like the overall reveal of what the central kind of mystery here, there was so much falling action. Like, I feel like there was at least like 5 chapters at the end of this book that we didn't need. Like, we've covered it. We got it. We understand what happened. We get the thing. And then there's like a little epilogue that throws a little extra like, oh, in there. But I didn't think that the epilogue was interesting enough to warrant how much there was to get through at the end of this book. I think it was way too long, and it needed to be cut down a lot. So this one, it's hard because I do enjoy Liane Moriarty's writing style in general. I think she has an interesting way of presenting the information. Like, everything all like comes together in a very neat way. And the hints are all there. You know, it is something that is guessable. That's a big thing for me with mysteries, is I don't like it when there's not at least one or two clues that have been laid as the groundwork, like when it's like some random twist that could not possibly be predicted. I hate that, because I just think that is a cheap way of doing it. That's not how she does it. Like, you very much, you know, you're not gonna guess it, because I think it would be weird to guess this one, but the groundwork was there. The clues were there, right? This one was very meh for me. I think I'm gonna give it a 3-star. It was okay. It was fine. It passed the time for sure. I love the audiobook because of the narrator and her Australian accent. That's always a good time. So if you're thinking about reading this one, I think the audiobook is, you know, if you do audiobooks, if you like audiobooks, that's a good pickup, because yeah, this one, you know, it was nothing special, but it did pass the time, and it did help me get through the chaos, the absolute chaos of last week. All right, reading update number 2 pertains to this book, The Whispers by Audrain. I am on page 257. Like, I'm almost done. I'm about to finish this right now. Spoiler alert. But this one, I'm also not loving. I am upset. I am upset about this. I feel like I started out strong. My first book of the year was a banger. And I think we've been kind of going downhill, unfortunately. Again, this is well written. It's covering important topics, but I'm just not that engaged, and I'm not that into it. Like, when I read The Push, I could not stop reading it. I couldn't put it down. I was like on the edge of my seat. This one I've been putting down very easily and been kind of like, okay about it. To go into a little bit more depth with this one, we follow 4 different perspectives primarily. So one of them is Whitney, and she is the mother of the child that has fallen out of the window and is in the hospital. And then we have her friend, Blair. And Whitney and Blair do have an interesting dynamic, because they have chosen 2 completely different life paths. Whitney has 3 children, but she is much more focused on her career than on like doing mom stuff. So she has a nanny. She, you know, kind of farms out a lot of responsibility to other people, her husband included. And she, I think, is struggling with the idea of she maybe didn't want to be a mother. But once you have kids, that's not an option to opt out of, right? So she kind of struggles with what people expect of her, what people want from her, and what she wants for herself. And that's fine. Like, I think that is a completely valid thing to feel. I think feeling like motherhood in and of itself not being enough to sustain you and wanting other things for yourself does not make you a bad person. She is a bad person, though. Whitney is a bad person. There's been like reveals about some of her choices that she has made, and they are not good. And so you're kind of like, at this point, I'm like, I do kind of hope something bad happens or some sort of comeuppance happens for her. Because yikes. Like, I was sympathizing with her kind of towards the beginning of the book, and as we've moved on, and I'm okay with a morally gray character, I am, but I'm not sure how we're supposed to feel about her. Are we supposed to understand that her actions are reprehensible, or are we supposed to justify them because she's unhappy in her life? Like, I don't know what the author's like central messaging is here. And then on the flip side, we have Blair, who is a stay-at-home mom, very involved in her child's life, and, you know, feels jealous of Whitney, but also judges her extremely harshly. So Blair's not a great person either. because she's over here being extremely judgmental and like creepy kind of with her relationship with Whitney. And we're looking at these two different ways of mothering, and both of them are like just fraught with issues. And so that's fine, like complex. It's a complex situation, right? There's no one right way to be a mother, sure. But neither of them are making very good choices. But Whitney is definitely making worse choices, for sure, at least at this point. And then we follow kind of two less prominent characters, Rebecca and Mara. Rebecca is struggling with infertility, and her perspective is extremely sad. It's if you have that struggle in your life, I would not recommend reading this. It's tough even as someone who hasn't gone through that to read about, which I know it's important, and I know it's important to talk about and to normalize to a certain extent, but her chapters are just so incredibly sad and bleak at this point. I don't know what's awaiting her at the end of this book. And then Mara, also incredibly sad. She is the elderly neighbor who's kind of just watching all the goings on, kind of sussing out what's going on. And her chapters are also really sad. So overall, like, this book is making me annoyed and a little bit bored and a little bit sad. And I'm not super interested. Like, I'm going to read it to the end and find out what happens. It isn't gripping me in the same way. And I think that this reads a lot more lit fic than The Push did, but this is just still heavily marketed as a mystery. So I think like a good comp for Ashley Audrain in general, just in vibes, is like Celeste Ng, Angie Kim, like those kinds of things. Liane Moriarty, I initially I think I comped her to this, and I wouldn't. Like, tonally it's just very, very different. So yeah, I am sad because this is the first book that I'm going to cross off my TBR bingo, and I just don't know that I'm going to rate it very highly. So, I finished it. What the fuck? What was the ending of this book? Like, no. This wasn't it. Like, I need to collect my thoughts a little bit here, but this book spent a very long time building up the lives of these characters and all of the different events leading up to this incident happening with the kid falling out of the window. And then it just ends. The resolution, nothing. Falling action, nothing. The plot threads of characters that aren't the main character and her son, nothing. And even that isn't wrapped up fully. And I know some people like ambiguous endings, and I can understand that that is like, an artistic choice. But I just kind of feel like I watched an entire season of a TV show and then the finale cut off halfway through. Like, this just felt unfinished. It felt, I don't understand. I don't understand why we did it like that. I was disappointed by this, and that's sad because I did want to like it. And I think the thing that's hard to, I think in the beginning clip I talked about, I was concerned about reading this after having had a child because I was worried about how it would like emotionally hit me. And it should have, based on what happens in this book, it should have hit me more emotionally than it did. I just felt this level of disconnect the entire time. I was kind of bored by it. And because the main characters were so unlikable in so many different ways, I just didn't feel any investment in what happened to them. And then the kids that are involved in the situation, I just feel bad for. And the like kind of ancillary characters of this, I just feel bad for, and never got any sort of catharsis for them or any sort of like, why were Rebecca and Mara in the story at all? Felt like the author wanted to have conversations about child loss, infertility, the difficulty of being a mother when you don't want to be a mother, the difficulty of being a stay-at-home mom and feeling like you should be striving for more than that. Like, she wanted to write about all these different components of motherhood and put them into kind of a mystery plot line, but then didn't really address them in any sort of real way. I think that it could have been a lot better than it was. And the ending, I'm not gonna get over the ending for a little bit. I don't think, like, what were we doing? What were we doing there? This book made me feel like icky, and not in a like thoughtful or, you know, thought-provoking way. Just made me feel like Hello, welcome to the end of the vlog. It is in fact the next day because I didn't get a chance to check back in. I do want to run it back on this one because I've had a little bit more time to digest. And I think one thing that I didn't mention that I would like to make sure I mention is how descriptive this book was about bad situations, specifically miscarriage. It describes several miscarriages in extreme detail. Some would say, I would say, gratuitous detail. It talks about, like, there's some sexual themes in here that are talked about, I think, with more explicitly than they need to be given what this book is. And so just, if you're sensitive to anything like that, I would definitely suggest content warnings. Death of a child, content warnings for that. Like, that's not a spoiler, that's just like something to consider. Yeah, this book, I think, is not good. I'm sorry. I think it is just a vehicle to talk about different kind of mother parenthood issues, but not done sensitively, not done with care, and not done in any sort of way that like really profoundly examines. Like, there's mentions of adultery and cheating, but there's not anything that really examines the effects of that or the, you know, reasoning behind it. Not saying that like it's ever excusable, but like just how someone gets to that point. It's just dropped immediately after it's revealed, and never delved into again. But I wanted to call out the kind of gratuitous like nature of the miscarriages and things like that, because I do think that it wasn't handled sensitively, which is unfortunate because this book is like dedicated every mom hanging on by a thread, and for those trying desperately to be one. And I'm like, this book is not for someone who is trying desperately to be, like, I would not recommend this book to someone who is trying desperately to be a mom. I think it's that would be really cruel to recommend this to someone in that position, honestly. So yeah, this was a big miss, but it does, I'll put the bingo board up here with the square checked off. It does check off one of my bingo squares. So we must be grateful for the things in our life that we have. Love this video. I hope this finds you well. It's kind of the surprise standout. I thought that was a really excellent book, and that is the one that I would recommend the most. Apples Never Fall kind of falls in the meh category for me again. So yeah, so that is my very first reading vlog. It was a little hectic, a little chaotic. Not really necessarily what I wanted it to be, but I did it, and I'm excited about that. So if you've watched this all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. And like, subscribe, comment. Please comment. Tell me if you've read any of these books and how you felt about them, because I would be super curious to kind of hear people's thoughts on them, especially because I haven't heard much about this one, and I think maybe it's just because it wasn't good and people didn't like it, but I don't know. Maybe someone out there loved it, and I would love to know why. So yeah, I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you again soon.